What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I'm Jamie. This is Headbanging Through It, a podcast where we talk about heavy metal and mental health and other hard shit. How's everyone doing today? Check in from me. I don't know how I am really. Yeah, I have been struggling. I've been struggling a little bit with it, you guys. I'm still feeling a little bit stuck in it, a bit better today than yesterday. So there's that. And I just feel like the winter does weird things to me. I don't know if it's just the fucking cold air or what it is, like the energy around us in the winter. I feel like it just comes out of nowhere. And even if I am ready to like battle against it and, get my fists up and be like, you're not taking me down this year, winter, it still seems to find its way into my fucking soul. I don't know, up and down. I had a really bizarre, overwhelming anxiety spell just a couple of days ago. My youngest has ski lessons every Sunday afternoon, and so I take him up there. I did that for a couple of reasons. A, because I want him to have some sort of winter activity that he can do outside that will help him survive through his fucking life, because I know how much I struggle. And I think it's really important to get the fuck outside in the winter. And then B, because it forces me to get the fuck outside in the winter by taking him up there and being out there with him. So I dropped him off at his lesson and then I went up the chair by myself. And I do this all the time. When I first was diagnosed with anxiety and PTSD, I had a lot of this sort of thing come up where I felt like I was falling all of the time. I couldn't get on airplanes. I was afraid to go over bridges. I've always been a bit afraid of heights my entire life, but this was a different level of fear. I couldn't get on chairlifts for years after my diagnosis without feeling like I was going to fucking fall every single time. And I haven't had that in a really long time. And I was riding up the chair, like years, I haven't had that. And I have been riding the chair every fucking week. I took my phone out to take a picture because the sun was out. And I'm like, oh, fucking glorious sunshine. Please save my soul from dying this winter. I'm going to take a photo of you so that I can go home and look at you when I'm sad. And I was like taking a picture of this beautiful piece of sunshine, like flickering through the trees. And all of a sudden I had this weird spell come over me and I was just like, holy fuck, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling. And I couldn't stop feeling like I was falling. And then I just started having like this, not a huge panic attack, but of like a mild one of like, I had to message myself that I was okay and that I was safe and that I wasn't falling and, and I was holding onto the bar so fucking tight. And I just kept having these bouts of like my whole body just like fucking going through the base of the chair is fucked. After that, for some reason, I went down the backside of the mountain, which is, I wasn't thinking clearly, obviously, because to get back to where I was and where my son was, I had to take another chair back up to go back over. It wasn't like I could just like go down and then not get on a chair again. It was not a great choice for me, but I was like, oh, I'm going to go down here. I haven't been down here in a while, so I'm just going to like rip down this run. And I did that. And then I realized I had to get on an even steeper chair to come back over to where I was. And I was like, oh, fuck, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And I got on the chair and I was okay for like the first half. And then at the end, it gets really fucking steep and it goes over this really intense cliff section. When my anxiety was really bad, I had to close my eyes through that section all the time. And I'd be with people and be like, oh, you're fine, Jamie. Like, chill out. It's not that big of a deal. It doesn't matter what you say to me in those moments. It's not going to stop my anxiety from just like fucking doing whatever it wants. So I was just sitting there like telling myself, you're okay. You're safe. Everything's okay, Jamie. You're almost there. Look at the horizon, focus on the trees, and like looking away from the cliff and trying to tell myself that the ground was like really close underneath me. Because every time I thought about how far away it was from me, I felt like I was just gonna fucking fall and never hit the ground. This weird sensation of free falling and never landing, which is a huge piece of this, I don't know, this piece of my anxiety that it was just like really loud and really regular back in my early diagnosis days. So it was strange. It was not a great time. I did not love that. And then I just like went down the front side of the mountain and I went back to the base lodge and I stayed on the smaller, very much lower to the ground chair for the rest of the day where it wasn't like super dramatic. It's so fucking weird to me, even now, and I'm sure I've said this before, that I don't realize when I'm not doing well. I don't see this stuff coming. I don't realize that I am going through something. I'm hard on myself about it because I feel like I should have a better handle on it. I do not have a handle on it. I don't know how or if there's any possible way to just make it stop. I don't think there's like a magical spell to figuring out like how to make my nervous system stop reacting to things. I was a little pissed about it because skiing is like this place where I get to be in sunshine if I'm lucky and relaxation and alone, or sometimes with my daughter. And it's just this really nice, chill outdoor space where I get to fucking breathe fresh air, right? And like feel good. And then when that happened, it took that away from me. It robbed me of that peaceful space that I actually really fucking need right now in the winter. So I was a little bit mad about that. Like, what? This is my safe space. Can you fuck off up here? Don't bug me up here. But again, like, I can't just make it stop. And like, what the fuck was happening there that made me feel that way? I don't know. It was really strange. So anyway, that was just like another message to myself that like, hey, Jamie, maybe you're not doing great right now. And that's okay. It's okay when I have those, moments. I know I'm going to have dips. I know that's just a piece of what I'm dealing with my mental health. And I would love for it to just like not exist. And when it shows up in spaces and times when I don't expect it, it just gets more irritating. I guess it's just another way of forcing me to look at how I'm doing right now, which is like maybe not great, I guess. When things like that happen, it's because I am not doing well. So then I come home and I'm like, ooh, like what do I have to do? Like what should I do? I'm getting sleep. I am like going to the gym every day. I'm going skiing. I'm going to acupuncture. What the fuck am I supposed to do now? Well, I kind of like derailed before around Christmas time. I was off sugar and then I fucking ate a bunch of sugar over Christmas and then all that stuff, right? Like Christmas is just a shit show. It drives me crazy. It always plummets me into like an unhealthy space through the end of the year and into the beginning of the year. And I think that probably a lot of people can relate to that. And then we start off the new year just feeling like sluggish and gross and needing to reset. And that sucks. So I am now like prepping my whole fucking life to be back off sugar and telling my kids like, buckle up, like you're going to eat what the fuck I give you. And if you don't like it, you can make your own shit. I'm over it. What I'm putting in my body also impacts my mental health. So I'm just like, okay, maybe that's it. I don't know. I'm taking like Chinese herbs. I'm doing like so many things and it's just exhausting. I've talked about that before. It is exhausting. And when you work so hard to do things to like keep your mental health above board and those things aren't always keeping you at the level that you want to be, it's frustrating. It's exhausting and we don't get days off. It's annoying. It's irritating. Anyways, what I want to dig into today, my topic for today is beauty in the darkness. And yay, let's talk about the darkness, you guys. I love talking about the darkness. I feel like it is a huge piece of my existence. I move through darkness and I enjoy talking about darkness, and I find pieces of darkness like beautiful and refreshing and raw and truthful. And I want to dig into that stuff and I want to talk about that stuff. I get a lot of like that, the feedback and the judgment and the like stereotypical reaction of, oh, why do you focus on the dark stuff? And that's so negative. Don't you want more positivity in your life? And why don't you focus on the positive? Drives me crazy. This is just how I cope with life. I'm hoping that it will land on someone that can relate to it and connect with it, and that might in some way, shape, or form help them cope with something that they're struggling with. That is the point of the podcast. My best friend, and I've talked about her numerous times, and I'll probably talk about her regularly, and she will be eventually on the show. She's like my most favorite person on the planet, and we deal with our lives in very different manners. Like she's a very upbeat and positive person and puts a positive spin on everything. And I am more like living in this tell it like it is kind of way. And I don't see that there's a right and wrong to either of those. I really dislike saying something is right or wrong anyway. Like how you move through something is just up to you. The world has just, I feel like, become so fucking judgmental, and people's egos have become so fucking big, and everyone thinks they're right about everything when really, like, at the end of the day, can we just have conversations and like open our minds up to the possibility that there could be another solution or another way through it that works just as well for somebody else? Just because it's not the way that we do it doesn't mean it doesn't work for someone. The whole mentality of the world of you're doing this wrong and I'm going to shame you for it, that whole fucking thing that has somehow become so normalized in society now is really gross. It really grosses grosses me out. And another piece of what I want to do on this podcast is alleviate some of the fucking stigma around how people look at things. And if we have conversations about the things that people have so much judgment about, then maybe it will help open their minds up and their eyes up to like understanding that it's not just one way. There isn't just like one way to look at things. And in all that is discussing darkness and dark spaces and what those dark spaces look like. People say, well, ooh, that's dark. Why does darkness make people uncomfortable? It's also really reflective for me personally. And I think the reason that I want to talk about so many of these things is because I've been through so much in my life and it really has changed who I am as a human in really good ways. Like, I don't ever want to go back to the way that I was before all of this stuff happened to me. My emotional and mental health, like complete fucking breakdown, is probably the best thing that ever happened to me. With that, it took away all of the pieces of me that I thought were true, right? Like everything that I thought about myself and my life, the foundation, my belief system, literally everything that I stood for, the ground that I walked on, like it took all of that away, right? Everything crumbled. There was nothing fucking left. I was literally sitting in a pile of my own fucking dust and ashes going like, how do I go back into life? Like, how do I get back into my body? How do I stand up? How do I even fucking exist anymore when I feel like there's nothing left of me? I think when you go through stuff like that, actually, I know when you go through stuff like that, it changes your perspective. It changes so many pieces of you, and it forces you to look at what really fucking matters. When everything is stripped away from you and you have nothing fucking left, it really forces you to dig into what you absolutely need to hold on to survive. In those moments, there was a lot of darkness. That space that you exist in after everything around you collapses, whether it's like some sort of a breakdown, grief, whatever the event is, trauma, something that puts you into a place of having to rebuild from nothing. If you haven't been there, it's really hard to explain. But if you have been there, then you understand that there is just like not really a lot to look at. When you're forced to have to get back into life, it just changes who you are as a human in all the ways. I know I thought repeatedly throughout my life about like the potential of not being in my job anymore and trying to do something new or making a big change. And the thought of doing all of that was just too fucking scary, right? I just like couldn't imagine not having like the security, the financial security of having a job, right? And like there's also something really freeing in the space of not knowing what's going to happen next. It's really scary and it was really dark. And also, when I look back at those pieces of like the nothingness and the sadness and the like openness of like, holy fuck, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Knowing that somehow I found the strength to come out of that and like climb back up and build back up and like generate a new version of myself is really, it's something that I'm really proud of, even though it was fucking horrible and really hard to get through. I learned so much on the way through that of like how strong I truly am in ways that I didn't know that I was, about things that I didn't know that I had strength in, and like that I could actually face all of my fears and demons and look at myself and tell myself that I am not okay and be okay with not being okay. And then moving through all the fucking traumatic broken pieces of my soul and like finding ways to just be okay with the new version of myself and what that looks like. There is a lot of stigma around discussing darkness, and I want to dig into that. You know, when people think about dark things or you say, oh, that's dark, like where does that come from, right? Yes, that's dark, and that does have like a dark connotation attached to it. And what is the part of it that is uncomfortable for people to discuss? What is it about grief and death and trauma and things that are hard and emotional for people to discuss? Why is it so uncomfortable to talk about those things? I have learned so much in those spaces of me just like falling apart. And one of those things is that there's a lot of meaningful connection in darkness. The people that aren't uncomfortable in those spaces are really the ones that show up for you. And I have really learned to appreciate the relationships that I have in my life with the people that have shown up for me during times that I was not expecting some of these people to be there for. Also, on the flip side of that, realizing that there are people that I love in my life that don't know how to show up when things get really hard. That was also really difficult to move through because, when you go through something hard, you expect that like certain people are going to be there for you. When you're all alone and those people aren't beside you, it feels really bad. I've had to learn through that those situations and when I'm in those moments, that it's not about me and who I am as a human, that they're not there for me. It's about them and the fact that they're not in a healthy enough space to feel comfortable showing up in a place that makes them uncomfortable. And that says everything about them and nothing about me. So that was really difficult and a big lesson for me to learn. When people don't show up for us, it's not about us. It's about them not knowing how to be there or being too afraid to be there. It brings up something for them that they're not comfortable looking at. I know that because I used to be that person. And I know a lot of things about judgment around pieces of fucking trauma and darkness in life and all these other things because I've also been through that. And I think that's one of the reasons that I want to talk about these things so much, is because when I look back on the version of myself that I was 20 years ago, I was a really harsh, judgmental, like closed-minded person that talked a lot of shit and knew absolutely nothing about what I was talking about. And I see a lot of that around me now, and it triggers me in a way that like it hurts me to the point where I'm like, oh gosh, I just wish that I could have told myself or messaged my 20-year-old something self and said like, maybe talk less and listen more. And also with that, we learn as we go through life and have experiences. And I've said that before too, right? Like when you're young, you're just naive and you think you know everything. As you go through things, you realize, fuck, maybe I wasn't right about that. And like people can tell you all day long, like you're wrong. That's not true. And you could be like, whatever, fuck off. I just used to be in like a much more closed-minded headspace about aspects of life. My core values and my belief systems were like really like tightly wound around me just from the way that I was raised and then the way I moved through my career. And then after I had my fucking breakdown and it changed my perspective on so many pieces of life, the systems that we have that are supposed to support us. And I've seen so many like really just things that have been really hard on my heart. I've lost a lot of faith in humanity. I've lost a lot of faith in the government. I have no faith left in the justice system after being in my career for so long. Like I have watched really bad people walk out and get away with really bad things just based on a fucking typo on a piece of paper. I know that there are lots of pieces of things that go on out in the world that are just like shit. And that has also just helped me look at things in a way that has just changed my whole perspective. I have learned to accept through that also that there are things in this world that are just beyond my control. I have to pick my battles. What am I willing to give up and sacrifice in my own life and my own body to like chase after and do something about? I used to feel like if I pushed myself hard enough, I could do more and help make the world a much better place within my career. I know now it just is not rational to believe that you are capable as one human being to do that. And I'm not saying like that you shouldn't go out and like fight for what you think is right or like, whatever it is that you're passionate about. I'm just saying that for me personally, it was a lot of energy put into a place that it was just a hamster wheel for me, right? I was expending all this energy and going nowhere and fighting a battle that, at the end of the day is just, I don't know if it's winnable, which is sad. And also it's not me in that position, it's someone else. And how much do I need to sacrifice of my own mental health for this greater good that isn't actually really providing the the results that I expected, which is fucked, right? And sad. But at the end of the day, the powers that be are the powers that be, and the minions are just the minions, right? Like, I feel like I'm a very insignificant small piece of a very big picture. And like, just because I snap my fingers doesn't mean any of that is going to fucking change. So, anyway, with like all the things that I've gone through with my mental health and like the deep dives I've gone into dark places, and I've experienced so much grief in my life. I went to my first funeral when I was 19, I think, of my first friend that committed suicide. I lost my grandpa when I was 13. My parents' really close friend died when I was 17. That was also a suicide. And then into my 20s, I went to more funerals and like multiple suicides of people that I was really close to that I fucking love dearly. I think with grief, there's a level of like reset that comes with that, right? Of just like understanding that the world is really hard and that there's sadness and that there's pain and that there's like these spaces that are hard to look at. And I spent a lot of time in contemplation when I lost friends to suicide of like, what happened? Like, how did they get there? You know, what piece of that? What was the final straw? The final, like, what was the thought process at the end that was just like, it's too much? It's enough. No more of this. I thought about that a lot. Could anyone have said anything to them or helped them through that? I don't know. I know now that mental health is a much bigger and tougher conversation than I ever realized back then. And I live through pieces of that every fucking day. So lots of grief. And then with my career crash and other pieces, right? Like, I went through a horrible fucking miscarriage. That also changed who I am as a human in ways that I don't even know if I can put into words. I could probably do a podcast on that one day for the women out there that want to have a conversation about the pieces of that just break your fucking soul forever. I also went through my best friend's brain injury. When they say like the floor falls out from under you, I've never actually like knew what that felt like until I went through something and I was like, oh God, now I get it. I don't feel like I'm on the ground anymore. You think once you go through that once, you're like, okay, I know what that's like and I can manage through another spell of something. And then it happens again and you're like, what the fuck? And then you learn from it and you build up and you like grow a bit and you're like, okay, I see things more clearly now. I get this. I understand this better now because this broke me down and then I had to figure out all this other shit. You feel a little bit more clearer and a little bit stronger after you go through something hard. And every time like the floor falls out from under me, I'm like, okay, I've rebuilt, I've reset. I feel really good about the choices and the things that I'm doing. And then something else hits you and then you lose the floor again, but in a different way. And then more parts of your belief system and your foundation fall apart and you're like, what? And I just keep thinking like there's not another piece of my brain that can crack open and make me see more stuff. I'm wrong. Like every time I'm wrong, because I think, oh, I'm pretty open-minded. I'll hear like different opinions about everything. And if you want to tell me about this, I'm open to it. I'll go down rabbit holes. I've been down lots of rabbit holes. There's some weird fucking shit in there. And I definitely think there's a lot of truth to a lot of it. And I don't want to spend my time all the way down those rabbit holes because I feel like if I get stuck down there, I am going to be just as bad down there in those rabbit holes, focusing on that stuff as I was before I had my mental health crash. Yes, I've looked at those things. Yes, I've closed things off. And like somewhere in the middle of all of that is like the balance piece. And that's where the aspect of darkness really comes in for me is I think that I like to talk about some of these darker things in life and the dark pieces of life so much because I've literally spent the majority of my life trying to pretend that things weren't there and ignoring my trauma and ignoring all of the like hard pieces of the fucking shit that I was going through that I just didn't want to look at or admit was going on, right? Put it in a box, soldier on. Things get hard, keep going. I've said this before, like that's how I was raised. Shit gets hard, you get fucking harder. You don't let it take you down. You just fucking keep on going. And so in that space and in that tunnel where I'm just like walking through the tunnel and there's all this shit piled around me and I'm just pretending it's not there and I'm trying to get like through life, right? Like just pretending that there's nothing fucking falling apart, burning, shit's on fire everywhere. And I'm just like, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. I think that the reason that I like talking about this stuff now is because after I had my fucking mental health crash, I had to turn the light on in that tunnel. But really, when I was in that tunnel and ignoring all the things around me, I was in the dark pretending that there was nothing there. And then I had to turn the lights on, like admit that it's there and then fucking get it out of this fucking space. Or at least be okay with being in the space with it and understanding that we share this space. But like, if you're in the dark, in the tunnel and you're ignoring all the things around you. And then I turn the light on, I'm turning the light on, right? Like I'm actually not turning the light off and then talking about darkness. I'm turning the light on and then looking at all the fucking shit around me. Yes, it's labeled as like dark and scary, but really what I've done is I've turned the fucking light on. There is lightness in there because I turned the light on. Like you can't see stuff if you don't look at it. And if you're pretending it's not there, then you are literally putting it in the dark. I just think it's like, it doesn't really make sense that people are like, oh, that's so dark. Like, don't look at that. But what I'm actually doing is putting a light on the darkness and making it not so scary. And there's beauty in that, right? Like I have these spaces that I exist in and they are dark, but in those dark spaces, I am finding my truth. I am finding ways to move through the pieces that have been really hard that I have been pretending weren't there before. So I don't want to keep moving through this tunnel and like ignoring all the shit around me and just pretending it's not there, because at the end of the day, it is going to fucking take me down. It's going to take me down. If you're walking through a fucking building full of zombies and you pretend they're not there, you think you're not going to fucking die? Like just because you don't look at the danger doesn't mean there's not danger around you. Yes, there is a fine line, right? Like I do fucking believe that everything's about balance. There is a fine line between like not focusing too much on this and not focusing too much on that. I am not the type of person that puts sunshine and rainbows on everything. That's just not how I live my life. I would rather like look at it in just like plain light and just like be honest about what it looks like. I also know that there are other ways to cope with things and other ways of going and moving through things. Whatever works for you and whatever helps you cope with your life, that's great. My best friend defaults to positivity in all aspects of her life. And I don't look at her and say, like, you're not being truthful to yourself. She's a very fucking honest person. She's truthful and she's been through lots of garbage. And she is not in denial about the way that her life exists and how she is existing in this life. I guess it just like depends on who you are as a person. So this is the way I cope with it. I just really find that having conversations about the pieces that people don't really feel comfortable looking at is where our work is, right? Like if you don't want to look at something and it makes you really uncomfortable and it makes you feel like you want to run away from it, what I've realized through all of my therapy is like those are the pieces that we need to work on the most. Wherever you have fear and wherever you're running, or if it like releases like fire in you or anger or crazy judgment, those are the pieces of ourselves that we are like not able to look in the mirror about and be like, oh, why is that upsetting me so much? Right? Like those are the things that we are not as healthy in those areas in the darkness. So back to getting into talking about like beauty and darkness. One thing that has definitely come out of being in these dark spaces for me is that the relationships that I have and the people that have moved with me through all of my fucking hard times, those relationships mean more to me now than they ever did before. Someone that you expect to show up for you disappears. That absence is really loud. Through that, I've also like realized that I have this amazing group of people around me that have held me up and been like this really safe space for me to just exist in all of my unraveling and sadness without judgment and without shame. And there's something so beautiful in knowing that there are people that will show up for you and just like exist with you in whatever fucking shape you're in. No question, no judgment, no nothing. Just like existing with you without words, because there doesn't need to be anything said, and just like letting you know they're there, right? And there's lots of ways that you can show up for people without physically being there and still letting them know that you're there. And I think that there's like a lot to be said around that as well. When, you know, people are always like, oh, something bad happened to you, I should just like let you be. And I think that if you've been through something, you know that it really matters who shows up in those moments. And the people that like are there to just say, I'm here, is literally everything that keeps you alive. So there is so much beauty in that and those connections and those relationships. And for me, I've solidified and forged some really, really, really special relationships that will move forward with me for the rest of my life. I also, through these stages of depression, I have created these spaces in my head. And if you've struggled with your mental health, I'm sure that you also can relate to what this is like. We all have these spaces that we go when we're not feeling well. And we talk about, and I will dive into this deeper on my depression podcast. But we talk a lot about the edge and the ledge and like sitting on the edge. And I'm like at the edge and I'm going to jump, right? Like there's all this like drama and cliche stuff around like suicide and like dark thoughts and being like at the edge of a cliff. And I think for most of us and a lot of it, I can't speak for everybody, but for my own personal experience, yes, I have imagined myself in that space. I think that a lot of people that hear that haven't been through something hard will be like, whoa, like, ooh, that's scary, right? Like you thought about going to the edge of a cliff, like, and jumping. Well, yeah, I have. And just because I've thought about it doesn't mean that I've done it, right? And just because I have a space in my head that I go doesn't mean that I'm actually going to commit to doing anything. I think that also talking about it helps people understand that it's like not really as traumatic and scary as you might think when you hear it. What I'm trying to say is that I have been in these dark spaces, yes. And also through that, when I've gone to the place that I call the edge, right? I have created this like image in my mind of this beautiful area of like, okay, it's like reoccurring in my dreams. It's reoccurring in my brain, but it's not like a scary space. And it's not like a place that I think of that I'm going to like go end my life or anything like that. It's just like this space that I've created that, you know, when things get hard, yes, I do think about going to the edge and sitting at the edge of a cliff. And I think with that, there's also like a stage of just contemplation, right? Like just because you're thinking about it doesn't mean you're going to go do it, right? It doesn't mean that you are there. It doesn't mean that you're going to jump. It just means that you're in a space of like, not sure what matters anymore. I also feel like that is something that is pretty normal. As human beings, we question a lot. I'm in my 40s. I've questioned life on many fucking occasions. What is the point of life? What is the meaning of life? What are we doing here, right? Like if you haven't thought about that, I am surprised. But when we go through something hard and we get to this space of like, what's the point? Like, what are we doing here? Everything's really hard. At the end of the day, we all turn to dust anyway. We're all going to end up in the same fucking place. Like it doesn't matter what you do now, what you do later, who you are, who you aren't, right? Like we're all dust in the end. That's it. So when you have these pieces of when you're feeling like everything is really fucking hard and you're sitting at that edge, it's not just about like, I don't want to be here anymore. It's about trying to figure out like, where do I go from here? For me, I have this space that's like, it is a ledge for sure. And it's like this big, beautiful space of like lots of cliffs. I've tried to draw it a couple of times and I just can't get the image onto paper. I've tried to paint it as well on canvas and it just like, I can't get it out. I'm going to keep trying, but it's this space and it's all cliffs and they're really high, like high, dark cliffs all the way around and right on the ocean. And the ocean waves are just like crashing everywhere. And there's like big white caps, like huge, like coming up as high as the fucking super high cliff ledges, right? Like everywhere. And it's windy and it's like chaotic, but I'm just sitting on the side of this dark cliff ledge. I'm just sitting there with my legs hanging over and I'm just hanging out. It's not cold, but it's not warm. I'm always in a pair of jeans, black, always black, and a t-shirt. And I'm just sitting there in this space. I am just like usually listening to the waves. One of the things that really like helps me cope with all of my mental health confusion and like feeling overwhelmed and feeling like it's just too much for me to cope with some days is listening to crashing water, because there's something really calming about that. Even though in itself it's loud and chaotic, it's also really beautiful and really just like forceful. And there's something so powerful about that where I can just sit there and stare at these crashing waves and just like contemplate life, contemplate like what I'm doing and witnessing the crashing waves and thinking about those crashing waves and how significant they are, how much momentum they need just to come to the shoreline and fucking smash everywhere, right? And there's just like a lot of power in that. And the cliffs are really dark and the wind is really stormy, right? Like all these aspects of this scenario that I've created for myself is in itself like very peaceful and beautiful. It's a safe space for me. I think there's like a lot of beauty in feeling like you are in this place of power and also not really sure if I'm gonna get up and like walk back or if I'm just gonna fucking lean forward. I'm laughing because that sounds dark and scary, but it also, there's something so magical about sitting there and looking down and knowing in 1 second it could all be gone and that you are still strong enough to stand up and walk away. And being in that space doesn't scare me because I know that I'm in control of my destiny. Just like all of us, we're all in control of our destiny. Sometimes being in that space also helps me block out all of the chaos of the rest of the world. And the rest of the world, to me right now, is just a shit show. I've talked about the power of saying no, and I say no to fucking media, the news, and like all this other stuff because it's so bad for my mental health and politics and all that shit. And there's lots of people in my life that are like, well, you should pay attention to that stuff. That's your opinion. I've paid attention to a lot of that stuff for most of my life, and it nearly fucking killed me. And I get to choose how I exist in this world. We all do. And we get to choose what pieces of it are healthy for us and serve us, and what pieces of it we could probably let go of. In this cliff space where I get to do my contemplation, I also get to just like let go of the rest of all of my stuff. There are pieces of it that are protective. There are pieces of it that are also just like shutting things out. There are pieces of it that are just, I'm holding space for myself. And there is scariness in there. There is some darkness in there of like, I'm here because I don't feel good. I hope that makes sense. I don't see it as a scary place to be. I think that people, when you hear it and if you talk about it, people are fearful of what that means. Like, oh no, you're going to jump off a cliff. Well, no, it's just like a space that sometimes we feel like we're at in our lives when things get really hard and we're pushed to the edge, right? Like quote unquote, pushed to the edge, and just feeling like maybe I am not in a good space and looking down and wondering what's worth it. What's the choice that I want to make? Do I want to get up and go fucking fight for myself or not? I don't know. Like, I don't have a lot of anger around the people that I've lost in my life that have been to a place where they felt like it was just too fucking hard to keep going, because I get that. No, that doesn't mean that I'm going to make that choice to fucking jump. It just means that I understand what it feels like to be in that space. Yeah, it sounds really scary and it sounds really dark, but there's also a lot of beauty in freeing yourself of all of the stuff that you're going through and finding a space that feels like you can hold some power of like contemplation and choice. It just is what it feels like for me. But I find so much beauty in that in lots of different areas. And knowing that I've been all the way to that edge and to that space, and I've still got up and I've still walked back and I've rebuilt my whole fucking life multiple times, not just once, not just twice, multiple fucking times. There is a lot of beauty in that. And I think there is beauty in talking about being in those spaces and getting up and fucking walking away. That there is the ability within ourselves to hold the strength, even when we feel like we don't have it, to fucking do it anyways, to just hold on to one tiny little fraction of something that will tether you back to this world, whatever that is. I also truly believe, and I say this a lot and I'll say it a lot more, that if we keep talking about these things, it just feels less scary. I also think that like when you're in those dark spaces, you connect with pieces of yourself that are just, and I think I've touched on this before too, but that are just like so honest. We can create lots of pieces and spaces of ourselves in our life where we're just like telling ourselves things that we think are true that aren't, creating ourselves in a way that's not really authentic or true to who we are as human beings. And when you're in these spaces where there's like nothing left and you're stripped down to absolutely fucking nothing but just you and your soul, and you can only look at yourself, there is something really, 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 really beautiful about having to and forcing yourself to look at who you truly are as a human, and then like accepting that in all of the pieces of who you are, in all of the things that you've been through and all the ways that you've been through them, and all of the choices that you made that maybe weren't that healthy for you, and learning from that and moving forward and growing from that and changing yourself into like a different version of yourself that is stronger and more healthy. I think that when we go through hard times and it breaks us down, we have the opportunity to do whatever we want in those moments and find a way to like be more true to ourselves. For so many years of my life, I told myself that I was a certain way and that I should live my life a certain way, and that if I keep pushing myself to be all the things that I thought that I was, that I would be okay. And if I kept telling myself I was this way, I would become this way, and not acknowledging that along the way, in the process of all of that, that I was so far away from who I really was as a human that I was destroying my fucking soul. I didn't even know what the word authentic meant back then. Being authentic and being being true to yourself. Like, these are all words that 10 years ago I would never have fucking said out loud. And I've done a lot of work to come through that stuff. I definitely was like very narrow minded about a lot of things and super judgmental. I shake my head at myself a lot. I'm okay with that. How do we grow if we don't make mistakes and we don't make poor choices? I also look around at the world today and I see a lot of people that are the same way that I used to be, and it makes me really sad. I know that I am not able to change how people look at the world. I just can't. Like, we can't. The things that change us are the things that we go through and the things that we experience. And you can talk about something all day long to somebody, but if they have never experienced it, it's going to be really hard for them to understand. Beauty and darkness, you guys. There is a lot of stigma around talking about darkness and the dark spaces. And I personally have a lot of joy in it. I think I'm so connected to the darkness because I have truly really like come through it in such a meaningful way. And having those dark pieces of myself, if I didn't go through those experiences, I literally wouldn't be who I am today. It's like a re-fucking birth when you push through something that's really traumatic and hard and you come out the other side of that. It really is a big deal. And I do think that there are just pieces of our soul that we connect with in those spaces that are oozing with rawness and openness and honesty. Those are the pieces of humanity that I love the most. When we can connect as humans in those moments and talk about those things that are really hard, it's just a different space to exist in. I appreciate those connections with people. I appreciate those conversations with people. And I appreciate the people that aren't afraid to look at that stuff and talk about it. That's what I'm fucking doing here. I don't want to fucking hide. I'm tired of hiding. I hid my whole fucking life and I'm over it. I'm going to wrap it up by just like saying I fucking appreciate all of you guys. My next podcast, you guys, I'm going to talk about some heavy metal. I fucking love heavy metal. We're going to talk about more heavy metal. I might talk about punk rock this week because I also fucking love punk rock and I have some bands that I love to listen to and love to talk about. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And thank you for continuing to listen to these podcasts, you guys. Follow me on social media. Hit me up if you have any fucking questions. If you want to come on the show and talk to me about anything to do with heavy metal or mental health or any other hard shit, please send me a message. That's it for today. I will see you guys next time. Peace.